Hi, Perry Foundation Board. It is a month after we've closed up the field season, and what I wanted to do is give an introduction for a tour that we did back in December of 2021. And what I wanted to do, what the tour is an overview of the sites we've been excavating over the past year. And with the donation that you all gave us for the home farm survey, we have gotten a tremendous amount of work done in 2021. The sites we've been focusing on have really given context to the site we're ultimately going to be excavating, which is the overseer's house just down the way over by the Madison family cemetery. And what we've done during the 2021 year is continue our metal detector surveys, and we've discovered through those metal detector surveys 3 different sites that there's enough objects there that they spoke to a level of activity that warranted archaeological investigation. And those 3 sites are the blacksmith site, which is at the furthest ridge you can see down there. You can see our old units in red down there. The second site is the farrier site, which is down at the bottom of the hill. The rectangles down there, that's where our excavation units were. And then the final site is the burn site, which is just down the hill right here. Now, with all these sites, what we've been able to do is really gain a picture of the types of labor that was happening at this farm complex. And what it's really done is it expanded our understanding of what the character of this space was. I mean, years ago, when we found the slave quarters that are outlined down there with the log cabins, we referred to those cabins as the field slave quarters. And it kind of gave a feel that this was an area where there was maybe some field work going on and some processing of crops. What we've learned from this season is that this was a quasi-industrial area. We found 2 blacksmith shops, which is the farrier site and the blacksmith shop. And the level of activity we found there really speaks that this was the main set of blacksmith shops, not just for the home farm, the core of the plantation, but for all of Madison's land holdings. And then also, we found a very unique, with the burn site, what turns out to be a tobacco barn that's using some unique, potentially heat curing methods that we have just not seen before. So we're super excited that what we've found out here has gone beyond our expectations and really given us not just an idea of what this area looks like, but also potential for more excavations in the future. So enjoy the tour. We're going to be talking with you all and fielding questions at a point after you all get this video, and look forward to talking to you all more. But thank you so much for everything you've done for us.
So what I have brought here are 3 trays, one from each of the sites, so you could really see what the difference looks like artifact-wise coming out of the different sites. So this first tray is from what we were calling the blacksmith shop. So the site on the top of the hill down there. And just from one unit, this entire tray full of slag plus this entire bag that we haven't filled in the tray came out of that unit. So massive amounts of slag, which is really showing us that this is a site of production. So slag is the waste from the blacksmithing process. But it's some of these iron artifacts are telling us some really cool things too. So we get an idea of what is being made and the kind of work that's being done. So you have things like this, which are a hand wrought chain link, something like this, which looks really similar to the chain link, but I think is actually more like a handle for like a scissor or a tong, because the way it comes off here and sort of the round shape of it, and all sorts of bibs and babs of things that we have no idea what they are, because they're the little parts that have been cut off or broken off when somebody's doing repair work or making something. But one of the other things that we have lots and lots of coming out of here are these guys, which are horseshoe nails. So horseshoe nails are identifiable by these big fat heads, and then they have these sort of flat, long bodies. And when they're brand new, they come to a really pointy point. And when a horseshoe nail is driven into the horse's foot to apply the horseshoe, the nail itself is actually beveled to make the nails bend out away from the tender part of the foot. So when we find these used horseshoe nails, they almost always have that bend to them, and then the tips of them are clipped off when you apply and remove the horseshoes. So if you have all the way to the full tip, you know that horseshoe nail has never been used, but if you have just the head and the shank with that sort of telltale bend, it lets us know that that's a horseshoe nail that's been used, so that removal process has been done by a farrier or a blacksmith. So we moved to the site that we were calling the farrier site. And what you can see initially is there's less stuff coming out of here, but still a whole lot of slag. So instead of 2 trays worth of slag, just 1 tray worth of slag. Lots of iron stuff. Again, lots and lots of these little horseshoe nails. And so initially we were calling this a farrier site because we had noticed so many of these horseshoe nails. And I think what had happened was we had missed how many of these actually were in the blacksmithing site because there was so much stuff that we were missing how many of them came out. But we're also finding still at this site a lot of these little weird things, clipped off little bits. I don't know what this is, but it's a thing. All of these kind of little bits of stuff, and then this is a hand wrought nail, so like a building nail rather than a horseshoe nail. So all of these things coming out. So it has us sort of like ask the question, is this a different blacksmith shop? Is this primarily a farrier shop, but they're doing some other bits here? We've also found some pewter come out of here and a little bit of brass, and we didn't find any other non-ferrous or non-iron metals coming out of the main blacksmithing shop. So are they contemporaneous or are they at different times? So there's still a lot of questions we still have to figure out. So we've just started cataloging all of this, and that's when we'll actually have the real counts and numbers for are there more horseshoe nails at the farrier shop or at the blacksmith shop? What does the percentage look like? Of the other kinds of nails, what do they date to? So that will help us sort some things out. Then we have the burn site. So these are artifacts from 2 different units, and already the artifacts are looking really, really different. First of all, there's a whole lot less, right? One of the things that I thought was really neat is we start to see a little bit of domestic stuff come up, and we found, I think, 2 pieces of ceramic at the entire blacksmith shop. One actually piece of bamboo and peony, and a couple of pieces of green shell edge that looked like they were from the same vessel. So like somebody dropped their green shell edge plate. But the big difference is the nails themselves. So instead of seeing all those little bent, big-headed horseshoe nails that have been clipped off, what we're seeing are tons and tons of machine cut nails. So building nails, but that date. Here's a really lovely example of one. You can see the blunted foot, the sort of rectangular shape. All of this means nothing to most of you except for Matt and I, but this is a really good indicator of dating, placing this well into the 19th century rather than the earlier nails of the 18th century. But look, a horseshoe. And maybe a yoke piece or some other kind of cool thing. So other things are coming up, but what's really neat of where that horseshoe and these other pieces are coming out is we do have a little bit of ceramic. We finally have some animal bones, so some cow teeth coming out, which is really fun. And a tiny little broken bone button. Yeah, so real sweet, a little 4-holer. Bone button and a tiny little shard of glass. There was also a bunch of weird things that came out of a different unit from the burn site, the slate stuff, and again these nails, a little hand-painted porcelain. So we're getting a little bit more of a smattering of domestic artifacts, but more variety, and certainly the iron is shifting primarily away from shoeing and unshoeing horses and working and creating iron into whole things that you're actually working with or using and building related stuff. So definitely has a different artifact signature than these 2 sites. The similarities and the differences between these 2 sites are giving me a lot of questions and getting really excited to see what it looks like when we then can map out where all the horseshoe nails are. We can really date all of the machine cut versus the hand wrought nails and really see what we have going on here. So I invite you, if you guys have any questions, but I'll also invite you to come up. And the joy of archaeology is you can touch everything. So get your hands a little rusty and dirty, touch some of this stuff, look at it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Just don't move things between trays.
All right, so this is the current excavation site, although we're actually today wrapping things up. But what we think we've found here is a fire curing or smoke curing tobacco barn. from the early mid-19th century. And for those of you who have been here for a while may know that we've previously found a fire-curing tobacco barn just basically on the other side of that fence in 2011, 2012? 2012. And the reason we were able to identify that in the previous barn is that there were these linear trenches that had burned materials in them, indicating that there would be coals or firewood or whatever was being used to actually create the smoke. But this site was a bit of a mystery at the start because it's actually one of the first kind of identified sites at Montpelier in a way. The first unit ever dug at Montpelier was dug at this site back in 1987, and I'll show that to you all. But what clued the archaeologists at that time into what this was is this sort of ovular berm, or by that I mean like a low mound that's surrounding the site, and then within it there's these circular depressions. So you might notice how it kind of dips down and it's this little saucer. There's another one in the middle of the site and then another one over there. Which actually kind of matches up with the previous tobacco barn we found. There were 3 sections of rectilinear burn trenches. But these appeared at first to at least be pits, so maybe a little bit different. So let's head on in a little closer to the features we found and how we were able to use those to figure out that it was indeed a tobacco barn. Y'all can squeeze it a little closer so you can get a good view of the stratigraphy. It's
awesome.
A lot of very small strata, stuff that really gets us excited in the dirt. So
I've seen it recently.
Oh, you can see it again. So anyways, what you're actually seeing here, I'll get in, where's my trowel? There's this sort of, it looks like a square hole that we dug inside of a square hole, but this here is actually, we unbackfilled a unit from 1987. The soil in there was very distinct, and you can actually see 1987 string. So we have unit string. They just threw the string at the bottom, still intact, pretty cool. But they dug it right in the middle of one of these circular depressions. And when we've realized that it was in the middle of a large pit feature. And this is the edge of that pit feature. We've actually recently realized it might be bigger, but that's beside the point. And if you all kind of look over here, you can just see all of this burned soil. So these dark soils with charred wood in it, this fire-hardened clay here, it almost sounds like brick, and then layers of ash. So there's multiple episodes of fires in here. So lighting fires, and it's actually turning our subsoil. See this red clay that's at the bottom of the pit? If you all want to come up and get a closer look, you're welcome to. Our subsoil is naturally red, but this is even more red and harder. So the fires here were going so frequently that it was chemically altering the soil and changing its color and its hardness. And there are multiple episodes of doing that, using soil to fill it in, maybe to put the fires out. But what's really, really cool is as we got farther down in the excavations, because we were assuming these may be like burned pits as opposed to burned trenches, so a different style of tobacco barn, which means they're probably not happening at the same time, because we know that one got turned into a threshing barn after it was a tobacco barn, because there was all these threshing machine teeth. But in any case, sorry if I'm kind of going all over the place. We've realized at the bottom, if you all are super keen of eye, you might notice there's we have a different soil here, and also over here, if you want to see, within this pit, we have a trench, and it's lightly scored here, and it's defined by this red soil. So we found an edge of red soil that comes here, and then it turns that way and lines up with the trench that we found in that unit. So within these big circular pits, there's a square-shaped rectilinear trench, just like at the tobacco barn that we found there. And there's...
That's awesome. I just thought I missed that. But that was like,
yeah, I know. Yeah, and then we think it turns right here too, right here. So it's very interesting, very exciting for us, because we can start to build patterns and comparisons from different time periods within sites that are very close to one another. And it just gives us more data to compare how, like going back to what Matt used to start out, the sort of skills through generations of doing all this labor and learning what methods work the best here at Montpelier, because fire curing and smoke curing tobacco barns are different in multitude of plantations throughout time, and these enslaved laborers are experimenting and finding what works best, and that's highly skilled, knowledgeable labor that we are uncovering. Yeah, we're not finding super exciting ceramics and transferwares and things like that, but this burned soil is just as, if not more exciting to us, because it really reflects like what is happening here, like how the site formed through what activities in the past.
Here's this beautiful, what appears to be a potentially intact foundation, and between here is this massive feature that could be, the forge, and if it is, why it's so deep. We're just beginning to understand this site. There's thousands of more questions and answers, but like what Mary was showing you, all the artifacts that are blacksmithing from the farrier from here. And it'll be interesting this winter for the analysis to see how they're different from what is up at the blacksmith shop, like Mary was saying.
The top of these units had nails, where we stopped was like the same layer as that we were seeing there with all the slag, and there was nail stock and
oh my God,
all kinds of crazy stuff just sitting right there, but we didn't dig it, saving it for the future.
The only place where we found bricks that are in a line is in the south yard. And when we were looking at the blacksmith shop here, we were finding with Dennis with the metal detector survey, and this is borne out with the units as well, we were finding clipped iron all across this area, some slag along the edges. But then when we got into this unit right here, inside this area there wasn't a lot of clipped iron, but there was a lot of slag. And then we came across these bricks, and we'd found bricks at this site, and we were thinking that the forge, the easiest way to build a forge is out of brick. Like if you go to Monticello, the forge and the nailery is made up of brick. It's just the easiest way to make a structure for blacksmithing. And so finding these three bricks right here, it's very similar to what we found as a pier in the south yard for the one duplex. The other duplex is completely made of stone, at least the foundation is, but the other one is the one with the brick chimney base, also had brick piers that looked exactly like this. The question is, that's kind of scary, is at least archaeologically scary, is whether or not the forge itself is somewhere in this area, like the actual brick structure of the forge where the blacksmiths, the enslaved blacksmiths are doing the labor, or is it out here where the DuPont laborers cut this road through? Because when Dennis did the metal detector survey and we had a program that the season after, we found a concentration of metal detector debris here, and then there's just a little blip of it over where the stair comes in right there. So this road cuts through that, and so whether that is cut through the main part of the forge, we can only hope that it didn't. But nevertheless, we found this, and this is, for the amount of damage that's happened at this site, to just have this road be the only disturbance for this entire complex, it's pretty remarkable. So this is, originally we thought this was the blacksmith shop, but then we got the other one that we were just at. But what's interesting about this one, like Chris was saying, is it's right next to the overseer's house, right at the top of the ridge right there. And so all this, it's the overseer's house here is really the equivalent of the main house at the south yard. There'd be no way to understand the relationship of power when you're looking at the south yard unless you knew where the main house was. And the same thing here, the supervisory role of the overseer here, when you look at where the overseer's house is in relationship to all this, basically every single site except for the farrier's site can be seen from the overseer's house. And so what that means about the farrier's site in terms of control and, where if you were an enslaved blacksmith, where you'd be preferring to work and where work would tend to take place. It's something, all questions we want to ask and be answered. One thing that we found is over at the at these buildings over here, the homes, we found back in 2012 we found a chisel that was made out of a horseshoe. So it was a horseshoe that had been refashioned into a woodworking chisel. And so, you know, items that are being made here, you know, items that are in the quarters would have been made at the blacksmith shop, and then what sort of trade blacksmiths would be engaged in with the rest of the community, with the rest of the, you know, the local farmers, that sort of thing. It's all something that we need to explore, which is cool.